Good afternoon and welcome to the New York City Council hearing of the Committee on Rules, Privileges, and Elections. At this time, can everybody please silence your cell phones? If you wish to testify, please go up to the Sergeant at Arms desk to fill out a testimony slip. At this time and going forward, no one is to approach the dais. I repeat, no one is to approach the dais. Chair, we are ready to begin.
Good afternoon and welcome to the meeting of the Committee on Rules, Privileges, and Elections. I'm City Councilmember Keith Powers, chair of this committee, joined today by colleagues Councilmember Marte and Farias, and we'll be joined by more colleagues shortly. I'd like to also acknowledge the committee counsel, Jeff Campagna, committee staff that worked on the appointments that we'll hear today, Chief Ethics Counsel Pearl Moore, Director of Investigations Francesca Della Vecchia, and Deputy Director of Investigations Alicia Vassell. We also want to apologize for the relocation, and we're being joined now by Councilmember Brannan. Today we'll be holding public hearings on the proposed designations by the City Council of Michael Esperado, a resident of Manhattan, I believe in the great district of District 4, and Vanessa Rodriguez, a resident of the Bronx, to be members of the board of the New York City Health and Hospitals Corporation. Both designations would be subject to appointment by the mayor. I want to congratulate you both on your nominations. Before we hear from the candidates, I want to review the responsibilities of the corporation. The New York City Health and Hospitals Corporation, commonly referred to as HHC, was constituted pursuant to Chapter 1016 of the laws of 1969 as a public benefit corporation whose purposes are to provide and deliver high quality, dignified, and comprehensive care and treatment for the ill and infirm, both physical and mental, particularly to those who can least afford such services. To B, extend equally to all served comprehensive health services of the highest quality in an atmosphere of the human care and respect. C, to promote and protect as both innovator and advocate the health, welfare, and safety of the people of the state of New York and of the city of New York. And to join with other health workers and communities in a partnership to promote and protect health in its fullest sense, the total physical, mental, and social well-being of the people. A board of directors consisting of 16 members administers HHC. Pursuant to law, 5 of the directors of the following shall be the following officials or successors: the Administrator of the Health Services Administration, the Commissioner of Health, Commissioner of Mental Health, the Administrator of Human Resources Administration, the Deputy Mayor, City Administrator. 10 additional directors are appointed by the Mayor, 5 who are designated by the City Council. The President of HHC serves as the 16th director. Under current HHC bylaws, the Board of Directors has established the following standing committees: Executive Committee, Finance Committee, Capital Committee, Medical and Professional Affairs Committee, Quality Assurance Committee, Audit Committee, Community Relations Committee, Strategic Planning Committee, and the Equal Employment Opportunity Committee. Each of the standing committees, except with the Audit Committee, shall be composed of the chair of the board with the approval of the majority of the board. In addition to standing committees, the board, by resolution passed by the majority of the whole number of directors, may designate special committees. Each should consist of 3 or more directors, one of whom shall be the chair of the board. We've now been joined by Councilmember Diana Ayala as well. The chair of each committee, both standing and special, shall be designated by a majority vote of the board. The term of director is 5 years. The mayor shall fill any vacancy which may occur by reason of death, resignation, or otherwise in a matter consistent with the original appointment. The directors do not receive compensation for their services, but are reimbursed for actual and necessary expenses incurred by them in the performance of their actual and official duties. Directors may only be removed for cause. If appointed by the mayor, Mr. Esperado will serve the remainder of a 5-year term to expire on March 20th, 2029. If appointed by the mayor, Ms. Rodriguez will serve the remainder of a 5-year term to expire on March 20th, 2027. I'd like to now welcome them both to come up you can both sit at the table here to be sworn in. Before we do that, I just want to offer Councilmember Marte an opportunity to say a few words.
Thank you, Chair Powers. The Manhattan delegation is really excited to nominate Dr. Michael Espiritu. He has tons of years of experience at H&H, working as a neonatologist in Bellevue, and now he's currently at Presbyterian Hospital, but his commitment is unwavering to supporting New Yorkers all across the borough. He comes from a family of doctors. His dad was an H&H doctor in the South Bronx, serving low-income families there. So I feel like he will represent us fairly well on the board, and it's exciting to see him take this role. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thanks, Councilmember Marte. We'll now have the committee council ask you to raise your both right hands, if you can.
Please raise your right hands. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in your testimony before this committee and an answer to all council member questions?
Thank you. I'm going to offer you both an opportunity to make an opening statement. We can start with Mr. Rodriguez first.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Chair Powers and members of the Rules Committee, Privileges and Elections Committee. Sorry.
You got it.
I am deeply honored to present myself as a candidate for the Health and Hospital Board of Directors. Born and raised in the Williamsbridge section of the Bronx, I received my undergraduate degree from the College of New Rochelle, the first in my family to achieve a degree. With 20 plus years of experience in the healthcare setting, I focused on HIV testing, PrEP, HIV primary care, case management, program development, and performance improvement. I have dedicated my career to improving the quality of care and advocating for patient-centered approaches within our healthcare system. I have had the privilege of working directly with healthcare providers, patients, and leadership to help enhance patient outcomes using data-driven models and streamlining processes within healthcare, including depression and substance abuse screenings, HIV prevention, women's health services, and cancer screenings, to name a few. My success in leading initiatives and improving performance has resulted in 2 publications, including a 2014 report in the MMWR, which is the Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report, which focused on routine HIV screening in New York City, New York City healthcare setting. And in 2016, a report in the public health reports integrating routine HIV screening in the New York City Community Health Center Collaborative. I've also presented my program outcomes and successes, data-driven results at numerous conferences, to name a few: the U.S. Conference on AIDS, the New York City Ring, Gilead Focus Partner Summit, and the International AIDS Conference. This past May, I received an award from the United Hospital Fund for Excellence in Healthcare and Quality Improvement Champion. Through these experiences, I have cultivated a comprehensive understanding of the challenges our health system faces, from the lack of primary care providers to limited access point for insurance, to resource allocation, to enhancing the patient experience. I am passionate about advancing our hospital's mission to provide high-quality, compassionate care to all members of our community. As a board member, I would bring a collaborative spirit and a strong commitment to strategic, data-driven decisions, making that will prioritize the well-being of our patients, address disparities in healthcare access, and create an environment where innovation and operational excellence thrive. I'm confident that my expertise in health promotion and improving quality of care equips me to contribute meaningful to this board. I look forward to the opportunity to work with my fellow board members and continue the legacy of excellence within our healthcare system. Thank you again for considering my candidacy. I'm eager to learn and discuss how we can work together to meet the evolving healthcare needs of our community. Thank you.
Thank you. I recognize to be joined by Councilmember Salamanca. I believe Councilmember Sanchez is on Zoom as well. You may go ahead.
Oh, there it is. Thank you, Chair Powers, honorable council members. I am humbled and privileged to be considered for appointment to the board of New York City Health and Hospitals Corporation and to be able to be here before you today. I thank council members Marte and Bottcher, chairs of the Manhattan delegation, and the other council members for this nomination, as well as the council staff who have guided me through the steps leading up to this today. As Councilman Marte mentioned, my father was an employee of HHC for many years, alongside his private practice, serving for decades as a pediatric dentist in health clinics and school-based clinics in the Bronx before his retirement. And so I felt a bit of honor when I wore my own H&H badge as I practiced neonatal medicine at the NICU in Bellevue Hospital for nearly 8 years. And I feel quite honored now to be considered for the Health and Hospitals Board. My experience is as a practicing physician in the field of neonatal perinatal medicine. And I think my experience more than anything else, in that I've experienced firsthand delivering care to the diverse population of New Yorkers who rely on health and hospitals for quality, compassionate, and culturally sensitive health care, really informs my approach to the work, my potential work on the board. I know how essential health and hospitals is to the health and well-being of the city and its inhabitants, and I'm eager for the opportunity to assist in furthering its vital and important mission. My guiding principle as a practicing physician has always been to put the patient at the center of everything, every decision and action. So if appointed, I believe that just as it is my guiding principle at the bedside, it would be my guiding principle while working on the board together with my fellow board members. Thinking first and foremost of how decisions would maximize benefit to all New Yorkers who come to and rely on health and hospitals for care. And in addition, I believe strongly in equity as a guiding principle, keeping in mind that all New Yorkers deserve to have access to the best quality health care. So in closing, I wish to express my sincere gratitude to the council for even being considered for appointment, and I look forward to answering any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Thank you both for your testimony, and I want to ask a few questions, and I'll offer an opportunity for colleagues to ask questions as well. I want to start with Dr. Espirito. You, I think, currently work at a hospital. You're now seeking to serve on the board of H&H. Have you sought out a waiver from the Conflict of Interest Board in order to serve on that? What guidance have they given you?
I spoke to the Conflict of Interest Board last week, and they referred me to the General Counsel, Andrea Cohen, at HHC. So I have been in contact there. They advised me to wait until the confirmation was complete before they would move forward with creating a waiver.
So if we approve you, then you will get the...
Yeah, they would move forward with the waiver process.
I see, okay. I want to talk a little bit, you Bellevue Hospital, which is in my district, and I'm very fond of. I believe your specialty is neonatology.
Yes.
And we've discussed here in the City Council disparities in mortality, where black maternal mortality is 5 times higher than mortality amongst white mothers here in New York City. Can you discuss some of the reasons that you see behind that disparity, any recent developments in the field, or particularly in your work to address that problem, and how you think H&H can or what they should do to improve its own outcomes?
I think, things start with prenatal care, and so aggressively plugging women into prenatal care early in their pregnancy, in the first trimester. I know during my time at Bellevue, there were a lot of mothers or children that I took care of whose mothers came into prenatal care late registrants, we call them. They came into prenatal care late in their third trimester, where a lot of monitoring, supportive care, nutritional guidance, things like that throughout the pregnancy were not really were neglected until later on, and so that certainly is a major factor in a lot of poorer outcomes. And then all of the other social determinants of health that I think can adversely affect the health of the developing baby prior to pregnancy, nutrition being a major one. So lack of access to adequate nutrition, adequate prenatal vitamins, prenatal care. So I think an important aspect of equity and improving neonatal outcomes is aggressive, really outreach and to newly pregnant mothers early in their pregnancy, being referred to prenatal care, to an obstetrician, from whatever primary point of care they may come into the system, whether it be their primary care doctor, or other points of contact with our system.
Thanks. In your answers to the pre-hearing questions, you had observed that Manhattan is served by many hospitals, which could be that to the detriment of residents of the outer boroughs. Can you talk to us a little bit that what role does H&H have for expanding services where there might be a deficit, and as a board member, where you advocate to make services more available?
Well, I certainly think that we, to promote equity and make sure that high quality healthcare is accessible to everybody in this city, we need to identify those areas where those services are less accessible, and if we can, build infrastructure. If not necessarily, perhaps be creative and strengthen primary health clinics, mobile outreach, even telehealth, maximizing our capabilities to reach people virtually or electronically, if they can't very easily, for those instances where you can take care of problems that way, if they can't easily reach a physical facility.
Thanks. In your pre-hearing questions, I know you indicated not having any prior board experience. I'm not sure you've been a manager with direct reports, which is fine. We're proud of the job you're doing. You're doing a very good job, Phil. But the position which you're being considered is a board of the largest public hospital system in the country. Can you talk about your skills and experience, and do you think will help you make you a good fit for this, including to fulfill the fiduciary and managerial duties of being on the board?
Sure. As you said, I've not been on a corporate board or in a very high-level managerial position, although I'd say in my daily practice, in my clinical work I do, I have gained a lot of administrative experience sort of collaborating with and managing together a lot of diverse specialties, a lot of diverse colleagues that come from different fields in order to accomplish a common goal, which is to take care of our patients. And so I think that would be one of my assets, as well as just the perspective of a clinician, of somebody that's delivered care firsthand in the HHC system to the patients that we serve. And so I think that I would bring that perspective and expertise. So I would always have in mind the people that I have had experience taking care of as a clinician at an HHC facility.
Thanks. I just want to switch over to Ms. Rodriguez. A similar question to the one I asked earlier, which is, you're in your current role. It seems like you might need to ask for a waiver from the Conflict of Interest boards. Have you sought that out? Have you received one?
Yes, so I started the process. I filled out the waiver form as the lawyer from I submitted it last night, and I haven't heard anything back yet.
Okay.
But I do have a copy of what
You
we
submitted your
waiver.
request for a waiver.
exactly.
You have yet to receive it or get an answer back from
Yes.
Conflict of Interest board. Okay. Can you talk similar question that I had asked at the end, which is, this is the serving on the board of the largest public hospital system in the country, which comes with a tremendous responsibility, both from care, providing their health care, but also fiduciary duties, managerial duties. And can you talk about your experience to date that would make you qualified to serve in that role?
Yeah, so this would be my first time serving on a board, but with my experience in the healthcare setting as an administrator, I do bring a background in leadership and serving the community, being able to work day by day with the physicians and understanding the community and patients. I think that this allows me to be a part of the board and be able to serve as best as I can. But I am here to learn more from the members because this is my first time. But you know, we do have large meetings, and we're able to address community needs, as I know the board does as well, to assure that the hospitals that are attached to H&H are running smoothly. Also, my quality improvement background, assuring, you know, the data and quality improvement and performance improvement is striving at all of the levels, because we do want to make sure that any social determinants of health is being addressed, and also cancer screenings, which is something that I focus on.
In one of the prior questions, we talked about social determinants of health across the city, and what do you think H&H can be doing to better address those social determinants of health, especially the ones that are having negative consequences? Here we talk about mortality, certainly we talk about nutrition, other issues that are having negative consequences in our city. Can you talk more about the work that, if you are on the board, you might encourage or think that H&H can focus on to address those?
Yes. So I think H&H can focus on improving patient longevity through improved long-term access, increase access to medical insurance, because I know that that's a big issue for a lot of patients, and the community getting insurance. Having affordable housing is another major issue. Targeting the food access. I know that focusing on the needs of the community, of the patient, being able to have more access to resources, community resources, such as more food pantries, possibly doing some more hot spotting to identify where those areas that are having that need the more focus. You know, hiring what I call boots on the ground, people who can actually be there for the community and help them either fill out forms, because it's those little things that really matter, and that patients do look for, right? Because they will, especially somebody who is, you know, homeless, who may also be suffering from diabetes, if they had somebody who was there to actually help them and kind of handhold them through the process, I think that's something that will improve the social determinants.
Thanks, Councilman Joyman. Councilmember Brooks Powers. This is a question for both of you, and then I want to go to members' questions. Can you tell us what you feel right now is the largest challenge facing our public health system, particularly when it comes to H&H? What do you feel is the largest challenge like, if you were to be appointed as a board member, what do you see as the largest challenge facing our public hospital system right now?
I think one big challenge would be just making things as accessible as possible to all New Yorkers, being able to get them into primary health care, you know, to begin with, which goes a long way in terms of prevention, and in the end, sort of cost cutting if you can get them into adequate primary care, get them low-cost, accessible health insurance, so that a lot of the chronic disease burden or more acute disease burden can be decreased, and we can really maximize our the capabilities and other efficiencies that put more resources towards that can improve the rest of our infrastructure and quality.
I think that similar, just assuring that patients or the community, the people that come into the hospitals, are getting the primary care, and they're not using the hospital setting as a walk-in, but being able to get the care if they are an inpatient, get the services that they need, and are linked externally. I think that because we do have a lot of people who are not insured, that may be one of the biggest challenge, just to assure that everyone is getting the care they need appropriately and the aftercare.
Thanks. I want to turn it over to some council members, starting with Councilmember Salamanca.
Thank you. Good afternoon and welcome.
Good
And welcome. I want to start your full disclosure. I know that Ms. Rodriguez, she works for an organization in my district called Urban Health Plan. It's an extremely reputable organization, and I'm extremely proud of the work that they do. So this question goes for both. One of the concerns that I have as an elected official in my time here in the council, and I know that many of my colleagues, Councilmember Farias, Councilmember Ayala, we share, well, Ayala and I, we share Lincoln Hospital. Councilmember Farias, I imagine a lot of your constituents go to Lincoln Hospital too, right? And so what we've seen is the conditions at times of which the hospital may be in. Physically, it's very clean, but it's an older facility. And I've seen in the time that I've been in the council, I've given about, I would say, a little under $15 million to Lincoln Hospital to address their capital needs, whether it's their mammography equipment, their x-ray equipment. And so, and we at times, as council members, we wonder, well, why isn't HHC paying for these pieces of equipment? And there is and I know that, you know, the funding may not always be available. So as a board member, right, for your distinctive borough, how would you work with us on the council to number one, help us identify the needs, even though each hospital has its own president? I imagine you'll be working with them. But also, how would you advocate at a board level to ensure that your borough is actually getting its fair share of dollars when you are reviewing your financial statement and going over the budget?
So thank you, Councilmember, for that question. So I would first meet with the presidents of the hospitals to understand what their needs are, understand the current funding that was provided to them, and to see exactly, to hear exactly where the funding that was given to them went to, and then give the specifics, and then bring it back to my board members to kind of get an idea of what would be the next steps before we could, if more funding is needed, or, where things were allocated, and to bring that back to you as a council member. That's what I would do.
Yeah. In addition to that, I think it'd be important to look at what data metrics potentially come from the hospitals in the system, seeing what kind of improvements in quality or efficiency are we getting from making a certain investment or buying this sort of equipment versus another equipment or making a different improvement. Looking at the data there, seeing what is really going to optimize the benefit for the patients in that community that's served at that hospital, is getting a brand new machine going to, say, provide a better benefit if you get this machine, or say devote funds to improving maybe an emergency room bay. So I think I'd look at the data metrics and also engage with the community, see what their expectations are or they feel their needs are that may not be being met.
Yeah, what those are the right answers, but what I am looking for once you assume this position, if you get approved, is what we didn't have, and I don't know if my colleagues had this. Whoever was representing, at least my borough, I didn't have that opportunity to have these conversations as to what the needs are. So I would really, myself, and I imagine the entire delegation would appreciate more than ever to have that representative for the borough come meet with us and give us an update, at least yearly, as to what's happening, and give us, and where we can brainstorm on what the vision is for our borough and how we can be of help. I don't have much time, so I want to ask one more question. My last question is, I know that the goal of community health centers is to prevent their patients from going into hospitals, right, to the ERs, vice versa. How can you as a board member advocate and work with your work with HAC and your local hospitals to work with the community-based organizations or community health centers to have a better interaction or communication with one another? I don't think many of them speak often.
Yeah, I think that's, yeah, I agree with you. That's important to strengthen those ties and collaborate, you know. Certainly, clinician to clinician is often, you know, a point of contact that happens, you know, outside of any sort of health system barrier that I think is important to maximize on. Improving our electronic data sharing, you know. Now I believe HSC uses, for the most part, Epic, which is a widely used electronic medical record system, which a lot of other hospital systems, a lot of other clinics and practices use. And maximizing those capabilities where you can share information among each other, make referrals, contact other specialties, and so that a patient moving from one place to another isn't necessarily totally unknown to the place, the clinic or provider taking care of them.
So because my background is working in a community health center, me being on the board, I think that just working with the board members to understand the importance of collaboration and actually going in and seeing where the community health centers are in the community of each of the hospitals. Setting some meetings, whether it is one-on-one, just to understand and also work with the hospital presidents so that they also know which community health centers are around and where the referrals are going to. So I think really if my background in community health center work coming onto the board can bring that to them so that they understand how important it is. And it's not just, you know, sitting on the board and voting, but it's really getting out there and knowing not only the hospital setting, but we want to make sure that patients are getting the continuous care and not coming to the ER.
All right, thank you. You know, I come from a background, a healthcare background, you know, it's important that when you go to the meetings, you just don't go there, allow them to present a presentation, and then you just vote aye or no. Question them. Question Dr. Katz. I'm good friends with him, but question him. You know, question on the methods that they're using, question in terms of how they're planning on utilizing their funding. And sure, what we want to see is that funding, that money, is actually coming to our hospitals. We want to also serve as a resource to you. And with that, congratulations on both of you on your nomination. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have Councilmember Farias and other colleagues after that.
Thank you both for being here today. So I do just want to reiterate what Councilmember Salamanca stated. I mean, it looks like we're adding more diversity to the board and people that are coming from our communities, educated and living in our communities, that are working in our communities, that can add a lot of value to what they're surrounding, that they're working or living within, can bring and highlight. You know, the budget for H&H is over $3 billion, and so as much as we can push on where that money is going, how it's being utilized in correlation to, you know, what investments are being made and what the data is showing us of where needs to go, we're hoping and expecting you folks to be able to do that for our institutions. Just for both of you to answer, you both were asked about care for people with Alzheimer's and the H&H system. Many people in New York City who live alone won't be able to manage care for themselves and won't be able to afford the luxury memory care facilities provided by private companies. What should H&H be doing now to prepare for the massive growth of people requiring long-term cognitive supervision?
I think you know, it's a very important question, a very important you know, potential crisis that we'll have to deal with. I think we'll need to see what look at our infrastructure and see if there is space that may be repurposed or potentially that is potentially underutilized and may be repurposed to help provide some care for memory care for our aging and dementia patients. I think it's going to be important to collaborate with a lot of community organizations that are there on the ground, assisting with the elderly and patients with dementia, because I think that's where a lot of the help is going to come from is the community organizations that and potentially other private. Potential private partners that are able to go into the homes and provide some care and therapy.
So I think maybe in the next 10 to 15 years, right, those that are in the baby boomers may possibly be in that time frame of, having some memory loss or full Alzheimer's. And I think that we need to think about who is going to care for them and who's going to help care for them. So yes, collaborating with home care facilities, getting more nursing on board, getting more long-term and short-term facilities, because there are going to be people who don't have family members that will be able to assist and help them with the day-to-day living for these folks. So I do think that really collaborating with the community, seeing where their needs are, and being able to get, not only the hospitals, but community health centers and their nursing, home health aides, case managers, really on board to help these folks be able to, still live normal.
I appreciate the thoughts on this. I do think that, as we're seeing with statistics, baby boomers, obviously they're the largest group of people that are going to be the largest group of people we will have to manage en masse.
Right.
And families are now getting smaller and smaller, and lots of people are deciding to not have extended families and have children. And so we will continue to have a subset of people that will be aging in place independently. And we do have to prepare as a city for that. And then I just, with the last question, and can I get any thoughts around H&H's responsibility to the maternal morbidity crisis that we have throughout the city, and any thoughts around how we should be preparing or trying to counter some of the numbers and statistics that we know some of our H&H hospitals are facing, specifically in areas like Brooklyn and the Bronx?
I think looking at the data, getting more education out to the community, being able to get those that are underserved in the health centers or in the hospitals to get that care that is needed, and nutrition, all the social determinants of health do play a big part of, I believe, on this. So if we get that under control, or at some point, I think that you will see more better numbers. And yeah, I mean, I'm big on education, so not knowing is not gonna assist that person that is falling into that category.
Yeah, I agree with that, and really getting people into prenatal care as early as possible. Making sure that even pregnancy tests are widely available, and so that we can get mothers as early as they know that they're pregnant into prenatal care, especially there's a lot of other chronic health issues that come along that are often seen together with pregnancy that adversely affect the outcomes. Not only maternal morbidity, mortality, but also neonatal morbidity, mortality, such as uncontrolled diabetes, other health issues, that the more that we can get expectant mothers into prenatal care early, and also adequate primary care, so that the other conditions that they may be dealing with that put them at higher risk for adverse outcomes are adequately controlled throughout pregnancy and by the time that they give birth.
Councilman Ayala.
I think so. Dr. Espiritu, my question is regarding, you've worked at Bellevue. You obviously have experience working in a hospital setting. I don't know if that's me or that. Oh, that's sorry. No, it's mine. Hold on. I'm sorry. There must be something wrong with that one. Can you point to an incident or a circumstance in your capacity as a physician in a public hospital setting where, the advocacy of the board would have been helpful to you?
Yeah, I could think of one distinct example is during my time practicing medicine at Bellevue, I was not an employee of HHC, but an employee of NYU School of Medicine, because that's where the physicians from NYU provide care there at Bellevue. So I split my time between Bellevue and practicing at NYU Langone. And I think one of the starkest difference was, and now it's different since since Epic was implemented, but the stark difference in technological infrastructure, that there was a very rudimentary electronic medical record system, I can't remember the name now, that was in use for a long time there. And so from a day-to-day basis, going back and forth to one facility where you had all the information you need readily accessible with a click of a button, to a very sort of rudimentary kind of documentation and lab result system, really provided a stark contrast at that point. So, and really provided a example of where a lot of some investment at that point really could have enhanced the quality of, or at least the ease of giving care, and as a result, quality.
Absolutely, I appreciate that. I mean, because for me, it's really important that whoever's representing the health and hospitals that are in my district is going to be a champion, right, for those hospitals. Mm-hmm. As Councilmember Salamanca referenced, we've put in a lot of money into our public hospitals, and that's money that could have gone, into the community as well. That could have gone for, our libraries, our public playgrounds. But that's not the reality, fiscally that we're in at health and hospitals. I get that, and I believe in, the idea of investing, right? Because I know that it's ultimately going to be helpful to my community. But it's very important to me. I've never heard from anyone on the board. I have no knowledge of anyone on the board ever visiting any of the public hospitals that I represent, and that's important. I don't, I think that life experience is important, but also being able to make the comparisons, right, between hospitals and how one functions as opposed to the other, how more resources are sent to one as opposed to the other. That's important, because you're going to be our representative voice, right? The representative voice of those clinicians, those nurses that are, overworked and understaffed, the equipment condition. I mean, I had at Metropolitan Hospital, the MRI machine was like it still is. We've gotten them a modular system, but it's in a mobile station parked in the parking lot. It's freezing in the winter. People, if it's raining, you have to kind of stand on, to the side so that you don't get wet while you're waiting. That I don't consider that an ideal scenario, and I hope that that's not that's the exception and not the rule. But that's not it hasn't been my experience. So I will definitely take a closer look at both applications, and I wish you luck. But obviously, that is something that's really important to myself and to the people that I represent.
Thank you. We've also been joined by Councilmember Borelli as well. Seeing no other questions from colleagues, I want to thank you guys and congratulate you again, and you're both excused.
Thank you.
Thank you very
guys.
much.
We'll now open the floor up to public testimony. Are there any members of the public who have signed up to testify in the appointments? Seeing none, the public hearing on these appointments is now closed. That concludes today's business. I want to thank everyone. I want to thank the nominees and members of the public, my colleagues, staff, and Sergeant at Arms. This meeting is hereby adjourned. Yes. These should not be. These should be. Well, okay. Not for discussion. Not for discussion.
According to IT.